Hello, everyone. Here is the real reason why the king totally ignores Meghan and Harry. Maybe what we see is just the tip of the iceberg. What we see is not necessarily the truth, but instead, what we see is what people want us to see. What I am trying to say is, as you know, His Majesty the King no longer accepts direct calls or responds to letters from his youngest son, the Duke of Sussex, Prince Harry, and a lot of people are saying, well, that's terrible. You shouldn't cut him off. But, as always, we have the inside scoop, and I can reveal the actual reason for the claimed cutoff. Isn't it a tricky one? You know, families cause difficulties, don't they? There are no two ways about it. And, come to think of it, Harry recently appeared on screen in the United Kingdom, assaulting his family. He couldn't bring himself to say he wished his sister-in-law, Catherine, the Princess of Wales, the best, so he simply refused to talk about her. And I understand that it produces in one way or another. But on the other side of the coin, there was an envelope there that you could have said, certainly, you know, it's a horrible experience she's had, and perhaps it would have opened a few doors, a few avenues forward, you see. However, it appears that this is not possible. What's interesting is that Harry and, of course, Meghan, their team, who have direct access to the tabloid magazine in America, basically want to get these stories out because, of course, they're just pushing ahead, trying to get all of the things that they want, whether that's extra money, funding, security, and, of course, the deal that they really wanted, which was half in, half out. Meghan sees this as a means to reinvent herself so that she may do royal tasks without the work, the prestige of the title, and, of course, the association. Now, some may argue that His Majesty the King is soft. I've told you previously that I've never felt that way about King Charles. I believe he can be strong when necessary, yet he can also be really forgiving. Whatever you think of the Duke of York's younger brother, Prince Andrew, he has maintained a distance while, of course, offering a friendly handshake. That is his prerogative, and it is his family. But the real reason His Majesty the King refuses to receive calls is just stress. His doctor has instructed him to avoid further stress and to handle things one at a time. Harry, of course, produces a lot of tension. According to that source, every time he makes a call, the king becomes irritated and anxious about whether he has done the right or wrong thing. You can imagine, right? So, this is where things get even more tricky since, as one might expect, Queen Camilla is also very concerned about her husband. There's a woman attempting to keep up with royal obligations in a life she's still adjusting to, as well as a spouse fighting cancer. And then you have the youngest son blathering on about security, his troubles, and all that has yet to be accomplished or resolved with his wife, Meghan Markle. But the most important factor, and this is a big factor, is that Charles and Camilla are aware that any correspondence could be used in a TV documentary, an interview, or leaked. And they certainly cannot afford the lurid idea of having a conversation on the phone that is secretly recorded. They also know Meghan Markle is always present in the room when Harry calls. There are no two ways about it, and it's interesting to think about how stupid Harry is, especially because she's pushing him to call his father and clear things out. Why doesn't he flip the situation and say, hey sister, how about you call your father and sort things out on his 80th birthday? However, as is often the case with Meghan, it appears to be a one-way street. And mind all the tabloid headlines and sensationalists, it's the king. He doesn't need the stress. William doesn't want him to have it. And he now has the last word on who can communicate directly with his father. People would argue that he has taken on a lot of that function and duty, which is understandable. So Harry's days of picking up the phone or sending a letter and expecting a response within moments are ended, and it's all up to one individual. Well, two if you include Harry, but only one, and that's the wife. So, Harry, if you can't reach your father, consider how she handled her father, and perhaps you'll comprehend the hole you're now in. To be honest, King Charles is wise not to take Harry's phone calls. Harry would probably record them to use them against his dad, and how serious the consequences are is beyond discussion. That information will be sold to journalists and media and get some money. And then where does that money go? The way to make money is not good, and even the purpose of using it is ridiculous. Have they helped people in difficult circumstances, or take charity money for personal use and invest in her wrinkled wardrobe? Is there something wrong with her brain? Okay, it's up to her. We will not leave her alone if she continues to affect the king, the royal family, and the United Kingdom as we know it. The dastardly duo are despicable for harassing the king during his cancer treatments. I say good on the king for not taking Harry's calls. The king is making his health his priority. Remember that Harry offers nothing whatsoever to the royal family. Meghan is always in the background like a buzzing wasp. King Charles probably knows from long experience it is never going to be a concern. Loving phone call, Harry isn't going to ask, "How are you, Dad? Is there anything I can do for you or get for you?" Even if the king made concessions, it would never be enough for Harry and Meghan, really. Always so, Harry still acts like a child. He needs to grow up and take responsibility for his own life decisions. He doesn't get to rule how others react to his demands. No normal child misbehaves as Harry does today. Harry is pathological and needs to choose medical and psychiatric interventions for the long term to try to normalize his habits and lifestyle. Of course, reforming a bad character of a lifetime might take a miracle in addition to such efforts by Harry to get the intensive care he needs today. It's so funny. I don't understand how such an illusionary person could be born. Meghan came into the royal family for 5 minutes and wanted to take over, thinking, "Look at me, I'm the best." Pompous and arrogant. Harry let her do it. He deserves the king not to speak to him. King Charles had 60 years wait for his job as an adult. Meghan wanted it ASAP, as in now. I don't know anyone here in the USA who likes the duo. Chances are no one will like them. They are considered yesterday's news. Truly, in addition, the fact they do nothing to help anyone, nor have they ceased to besmirch the royal family. People in America don't respect them, period. Besides, no matter how I feel about Camilla, I will say her strength is what the king needs now. In short, Harry needs to be cut off. They spend money like it's water, and from what I understand, prior to the wedding, Prince Charles told Harry that Markle should continue acting and working because he couldn't afford to support her. Then, she decided not to get another acting job and spent over $1 million on her clothing and other accoutrements in the first year of her marriage. The king should continue to not take Harry's calls. He needs to take care of himself and reduce his stress. It's been proven that high stress can cause cancer. I would suspect that high stress can also exacerbate it. In addition, I've never understood how on earth Meghan was able to get an allowance for her mommy. Ludicrous. She definitely didn't deserve any money, period. They're a pair of extortionist grifters. Honestly, if we are seeing the real Harry now, then for how many years has Charles taken this disgraceful behavior from the 40-year-old self-entitled brat? I think the king is more than justified in his treatment of Harry. He is not a child. He is a middle-aged man, for goodness sake. Do people actually think that it's only since Harry got with this blood-sucking parasite that we see how despicable has-been's behavior is? The palace covered up for him. For years, he behaves like a child, always whining. Poor me, using his dead mother as justification for how he is. What he conveniently forgets is that he was not the only one who lost their mother. But it's always about Harry. His mother must be spinning in her grave at what a total disappointment he's turned out to be. Anyway, there's nothing worse than a spiteful, vengeful son or a daughter. I feel bad for King Charles. It's one thing from any family can feel empathy with. Money doesn't soothe any of us who have an estranged family member, and whatever reasons they use don't lessen the pain or grief the family feels over that loss. But I understand the hope that you hold on to with no evidence. It's realistic. I think, intentional or not, Harry has tormented and stressed his ailing grandpa, granny, and now his papa. I see a pattern. I'm sure the king does too. Tough love. Blaming Meghan will never diminish or excuse Harry's behavior over the last few years, which impacted his vulnerable grandparents and now his ailing father. He chooses to continue leaking stories and imagined grievances, complaining and discussing his family with no thought, concern, or compassion for their mental health or well-being. Excusing and defending him only enables him to prolong his attacks against the brother he describes as his nemesis. No argument, a book, documentaries, interviews, endless puff pieces, leaking every private conversation in order to damage the reputation of the RF, leeching off his father and sister-in-law's illness while choosing to use his brother's kids to undermine him as a parent, to grab headlines, and yet some still naively believe that the years of targeted bullying and cruelty was and is not his intent. Do you think he deserves it when it is said that Harry needs some tough love to help him grow up and take responsibility for himself and his life? He's almost 40 years old. He wanted to find freebies in the real world. He's whinged, whined, betrayed, and backstabbed the British monarchy, the UK, and Commonwealth ever since, alongside his wife. I'm glad Charles is leaving them to fend for themselves. The last thing His Majesty needs right now or ever is Harry and his wife-fueled nonsense. King Charles isn't just a normal father. The man has massive responsibilities, so he's not available at the drop of a hat anytime the brat wants to talk. My father was a businessman, and I had to wait until he got out of his meetings to talk to him. Totally out of touch with reality, that pair. Or have they decided they are so important the king is waiting with bated breath to take their calls anytime? I'm blowing a raspberry over here. Do you agree with my thoughts? Please express your thoughts in the comments below. Thank you very much for watching our videos. Don't forget to support us by liking, sharing, and subscribing to the channel. Now goodbye, and see you again.